course management. The first half will be the course side of course management, whereas the second half of this, the second hour, is intended to be the EMIS side, the state reporting side for the state of Ohio. So please stay tuned in for the entire presentation, because we definitely want you to see, even if you don't do state reporting, we think it's very important that anyone who does what we call course management, in other words, creating courses, editing courses, making courses available to the correct buildings for the correct years that they need to be. We do believe that you need to understand the state reporting repercussions side of all that you do there in your district. So I just want to start off with a couple of introductory type of ideas here on what we're going to talk about. When you're creating courses, you do want to make them specific to where you want them available. And what I mean is, sometimes we get into districts where new courses are created, and by default, the person who's creating the courses, either through a lack of understanding or just not following through on the, all the settings, they may leave all buildings in the district checkboxed when they create that new course. What that results in sometimes, and we just saw a district with this yesterday that we helped out, that you may be making all your kindergarten and first grade courses available to the high school. Now, of course, the high school is not going to use those courses, but it is going to, I would say, gum up their course list, right? It's going to add a lot more options for them to have to sift through, and no one really wants that in the building, right? They don't want to have to look through all of the courses that they're never going to use. So that's one kind of introductory thing I want you to keep in mind when courses are created, or when kind of doing course cleanup. We recommend that you only make the courses available to the buildings that need them and in the years in which they need them. So with that in mind, if there is a course that's no longer being used at a building, you can make it unavailable for the future year as you're getting started in looking at the next year. So that's another thing we recommend, making the courses that are no longer in use unavailable for the future year. That way they're not rolling over consistently every year to the new year. And then the other piece I want to point out to kind of get started here is that we do recommend all courses are created at the district level. The district office level is where we believe course management should take place. And from there, courses should be pushed out to each building. Now, we do have buildings who do it, or we do have districts that do it a little bit differently, where the course management is taken care of at the school building level. But we recommend it's done at the district level for a couple of reasons. One is the consistency piece. If there's one or two people, staff members that are doing the course management from the district office level, there's a mode of consistency in the way the courses are created in terms of course numbers, course titles, names, and all the other settings, including those state reporting pieces we're going to talk about in the second half. With all that in mind, we do advise strongly and basically require that you're involving your EMIS coordinator. So whomever is creating these courses at the district office level is working with their EMIS coordinator to be sure that the EMIS pieces are set up correctly. Speaking from a personal standpoint, the district I came out of years ago, I was responsible for creating the courses. But every time I created a course, the way I thought it should be set up, I would send my EMIS coordinator the course number and course name and ask them to review it for me and fill in the EMIS pieces. Now, you all may have, I know every district works slightly differently in who's responsible for what. That's just how we did it. And that ensured that the course was created by the person who knew what needed to be created, but it was also confirmed and updated by the EMIS person who knew there'd be EMIS errors if I set anything state reporting up wrong. So just some things to keep in mind. The other reason we recommend that it's done at the district office level is you don't want duplicate courses active and available in your district. So for example, I always use Algebra 1 in this example. It's the easiest one to use because a lot of our districts, if not all of them, have Algebra 1 available to both their 8th graders in middle schools and they're ninth graders or 10th graders in high school. And if you're using two different Algebra 1 course numbers, those are both reporting to the transcript. They're both being reported for graduation to the state. And there's some inconsistency between those two course numbers just in the way the course is set up. That's going to throw you some problems down the road for state reporting. You wouldn't want to be reporting graduates out of the same district with two different types, let's say, of Algebra 1 courses. So if you find that you're using, in my example, two different Algebra 1 courses in your district, and they're not, and they're truly supposed to be the same traditional Algebra 1 course, because I know there's some variety there in types of Algebra 1 and types of math courses available to types of students. But if they're supposed to be the same, but they're slightly different, that could cause errors. And if you notice that, we do recommend making for the future year one of those unavailable and then using the same course in both buildings when you can. If that's already happening for this year, it's going to be a moot point. You don't want to change things mid-year, of course. Okay. So with that said, a little bit more introductory type things. Now, here is the point where I do want to share my screen with you because there's something I want to show you. Many of you have already seen this. Some of you have not. But over the summer, our team here at Meta, our PowerSchool team, our developers did help us create a new place for all of our documentation. And I really love it. I want to share that with you if you haven't seen it yet. It's an easier way to find our documentation. You no longer have to go out to the website. You simply go into the PowerSchool Help menu up here. Some of you saw this last year. But when you go to the PowerSchool Help menu, in the top right corner of my screen here, you will see meta documentation, which this did exist last year. But now you can no longer access our documentation from our website, which some of you may have already found. So primarily the reason I'm showing you this now is because there are some documents we're going to reference here in this very training, but also for the future, for anything that you need, this is where you're going to find our documentation now. So I'm going to click into there, and you will see that there are 316 total documents. Now, I could download as many of these as I want, but I'd really caution you not to do one of these. Don't checkbox all 316 and download. That would take a while. And in my opinion, there's no reason you need to do that right now. The most important reason is that these are fluid documents. We are updating these, I wouldn't say constantly, but there are times, I just updated a document this morning. I will probably update another one, a different document tomorrow for Power Scheduler. So as team members get in and work on documents, these are updating, and it does give you a last modified date. So that may be useful information for you. But the best way to use this documentation site is to use the search or the filters. So this icon over here is going to give you a list of filters, such as matching over here, these columns, core area, subject, document type. And I could, down here, checkbox the things I'm looking for, and it's going to quickly sift down to only things in that category. I'm going to uncheck that because a different way to use this is, since we're in the course management training right now, I could type in the words course management, and our new search here is looking for any documents that either have the words course management in the title or course management listed in the subject area, as you can see, because that's one of our options. A lot of these documents have more than one subject area. Some have more than one core area, as you can see. But this is just a great way to be able to find what you're looking for. I think it's going to be a lot easier than going through the different folders. We found that we had multiple copies in some cases. Some were out of date in the different folders in our old file folders. So we've brought everything into one folder for you with a website that lets you filter and search. Any questions about our documentation in general? All right, so a couple of docs that I want to point out to you First off, just another note about the documentation in general, when you click on one of these docs, it's going to download it for you. So it does not just pop it open in a browser window, it does download it. So I'm going to click here, and then it downloads it for me. And this is the file I just downloaded, creating a new course. This is one piece that we're going to be referencing, one doc we're going to be referencing here in the next hour or so, creating a new course in Core PowerSchool. So that's one that I'd recommend that you take away from this training. It's fairly basic, but it does give a definition of each of the pieces that you want to fill in for your courses when you're creating one. Don't need that anymore. And then the other one I want to point out is something I believe was created by a district. This is a spreadsheet here that was submitted, I believe, again by a district, and we gave that a document type of template, because what she did was she created the person who creates courses at the district office level uses this, shares it out with all staff members that may be involved in course management or course creation. Give me 1 second. There we go. And she shares this out with all her staff and says, okay, anyone who thinks they need a new course created can submit this form to me. And here's an example of what needs to be. And they would create a new line and actually put all the parameters of that new course based upon what they think needs to be done. So this way, there's no one at the building level. There's no one who, shouldn't be touching course management, let's say, new course creation, touching that. They're submitting via a form. And you may have a more effective way to do this, such as maybe it's a Google form. Maybe that's, or a Microsoft form. Maybe that's something that works for you. This is what works for this district, and I really like it because then she has a file that says, okay, this is what they submitted. She can confirm with the administrators at the administrative level to know that this is what we need. This is the course that we need, and then she can create the course once she confirms with the people that need to be confirmed with that this is the course that needs to be created. So it's a little bit of checks and balances process, as opposed to somebody going in and saying, I need a coffee brewing course. So I'm going to go create, because we're thinking about offering that next year. So I'm just going to go put it in. All right. No, this way there's more of a submission process. So I do like this. So it's just something to keep in mind, something you might consider if you're not already doing it. The last document I want to show you for right now is the one that was just added this morning. This is Susan Payne's notes on what she's going to talk about when she arrives here. Course management review from the EMIS side. That's what I chose to call it. I thought that would be appropriate because I've got the words course management in there for the filter, but also the word EMIS. And then these columns haven't populated yet because it's a brand new doc, but probably later today, if you looked in here, you would see that it'll be an EMIS document type and core area of scheduling and subject of probably all these scheduling pieces plus course management. So those will populate later, but it is a brand new document this morning. So it'll be up to date for this year, which is awesome. Likely this doc here will go away because this is going to be the one that replaces that. This was last year's, just to give you an idea. All right. Any questions about the documents we're going to be referring to today, documentation in general, kind of where we're going with this training, anything like that? All right. And I just checked the chat, and I don't see anything new in terms of anything I covered in the last few minutes. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So something I want to point out that most of you may know, maybe our newbies do not. We've got a variety of users on the call, which I always appreciate. So we've got some veteran district leaders who've been around in PowerSchool for a few years. We've got some newer staff, but we've also got some brand new people. So I'm going to try to cover everybody here. So when at this time of year if you have any buildings that are using Power Scheduler. Around this time of year, you're going to need to create a new year-long term for the following school year, because those people in your district that are working in Power Scheduler are going to need access to that new year-long term. But from the course management perspective, what that does is by creating that year-long term at the district office level and then at the building level as well, it's going to also make all of the courses that were available within each building in 24-25 available in the 25-26 year, again, by default. So this is a really important step for anybody that's doing future year scheduling, again, in Power Scheduler. Eventually, it'll become important to your elementary/live side schedulers in the spring, but I know we're not quite there yet with those folks. But I do want you to know that by doing this, it's going to make those courses available. And that's an important point to make here, because if you're in the mode of wanting to do course cleanup, then you're going to want to you're going to have to think about it from that perspective. Now, if there's courses that need to be made unavailable, and we'll walk through those steps, by the way. If there's courses that need to be made unavailable in the future, I'm going to go to those courses and make them unavailable for the 25-26 year. If there's no course sections being used in 24-25, you could also make them unavailable for 24-25. In fact, PowerSchool will let you know if you try to make a course unavailable for the current year and there's currently active sections. So there's really no way that you can make a course inactive or unavailable that is currently in use in your buildings. So that's a good thing. We like that. All right. So if you're unfamiliar and you need to build that new term, you don't have to do it this morning, but if you're unfamiliar, you would go to the years and terms page at the district office level. Now, kind of my mantra with the new enhanced menu has been, you can find things over here in the new enhanced menu, but if you're not confident, if you haven't really studied this new enhanced menu or don't have a lot of experience with it, use the PowerSchool search. That's what I'm doing. As often as I am using this menu, I just find it so much easier to come over here and search it. But if I did want to go to years and terms at the district office level, I'd go to district management, course or scheduling, and years and terms. Or I can type years and terms in up here if I know what I'm looking for, right? It's pretty specific. The other thing I want to point out when we're talking about creating the new year term for your buildings is, if you're not familiar with batch school setup, get familiar with that. If you're the person who creates any of the pieces like years and terms that are pushed out to all the school buildings, then you can create it here in batch school setup for one building and push it out to all the buildings that you select. So it's a quicker, easier way. I know we've got a couple of our users on the call that are working in districts that have 8 or 10 school buildings, especially for you. Even if you have 3 or 4, saves you a little bit of time on that. So yeah, but you can create the new year long term at years and terms individually for the district office and each of the buildings if that works better for you. If you're a small building, if you're only managing certain buildings in your district, understandably. So 2 different ways to do that. All right. So let's talk about the settings on who or how you can edit courses or create new courses. Another place I want to take you is the course settings. So the course settings are basically just a series of a few checkboxes that allow users at the buildings to manage courses versus at the district office. So knowing that it's called course settings, I knew that, so I could search that, but you may not know the name of that page. So I do want to show you where that's found. If you go to District Management, Courses and Programs, and you go to Course Settings. Again, a series of options that you'll want to look at and make decisions on here. And I'm going to talk through each one of those right now. If you only want new courses to be created at the district office, which we do highly recommend, you would check that box. All right. Similarly, course equivalencies to be created and edited at the district office. I've never really had a question about that particular setting there, but I would say if you're checkboxing this one, then you probably want to checkbox that one. Vice versa, if you want to uncheck that and let courses be created at the or at the school building level, you'd probably want to uncheck that too and give them that capability as well. The third option is slightly different, and it takes a little bit more consideration on your users. Do you want your users at the school building to be able to adjust the course availability? What that means is, again, what I talked about in the introduction here is making the courses, part of the course management and course creation process is you have to make the courses available at the right buildings in the years that you need them available. So this setting allows school building users to make courses available or unavailable in their own building. So if they can see the course, they can manage the availability of it, even if they can't create new courses at their building. So that's an option. And we leave that completely up to the building, like all the district, like all of these settings. But just something to consider. I know a lot of our buildings are set up this way, where they do allow the schools to adjust their own course availability because they'll know what they need. But some of you like to have a closer management, hold it a little closer to the people at the district office level that are creating courses. And only those people are adjusting whether courses are available in a building. So. All right, I have a question in the chat. That screen is not an option for me. Is this a standard or authorization enabled? So everywhere in PowerSchool is going to be based on your security. Every user is in a security group, and there's an administrative group that we at Meta are all part of, and some of your administrative staff, like district leaders, would be in. Whereas there's as many groups as your district leader wants to create in terms of security, and those groups determine what you may see or not. There are also roles that can be added to users to kind of give them more flexibility and viewability on some of these screens and editing rights on some of these screens. And it sounds like how your account is set up that you're probably in a group that does not have access to some of the course management features. So that's when we get to the point where we go over to the courses, that may become very important for you in this training to know. If you can't create new courses or edit courses, that's something you'll want to talk to your district leader about in the security that you have. Because I'm thinking if you don't have access to the screen, you may not have access to the course, the actual courses screen, or the ability to edit courses as well. Any questions about the options on this screen? Okay. All right. What I also want you to know is I was playing around with these options the other day. And when I came into by the way, I'm in a train environment. I have fake student data here. When I came into this screen the other day and I was toying around with the settings, what I did notice is by adjusting the setting, by checking these boxes, submitting, and then going to the building level, I was still able to adjust the course availability in the school. And it threw me a little bit. So I believe that this takes an overnight process if you change this, based upon my experience recently. So keep that in mind. If you're changing this today, you may not see the impact or the effects of that until tomorrow. And there's several places in PowerSchool that do require that overnight process to kind of reset the deck on all the settings. And I believe this is one of them. So let's go to the courses page. Let's get right into it. So again, I can go to District Management, Courses and Programs, Courses, or I can just type in courses over here. And the very first screen that comes up is the courses page. Again, everything I'm doing so far is at the district office level. So I am going to be talking at the district office level. If you're on this call and you don't have access to your district office level, that's probably intentional based upon the security in your district. I still think it could be helpful, even if you're not the one creating courses at the district office. You may still be in the right place to learn what this process looks like, and then it'll be some information to take back to your team at your district to help decide, if maybe you should have access to being able to create courses at the district, or maybe not. Maybe that's someone else's position. So I'm going to walk through a couple of the settings here on the courses search. About 4 or 5 years ago, this page changed, and it threw a few people, threw a lot of us actually, because the old page is so different. So if you've been around in PowerSchool a while, you know what I mean. But those of you newer won't know a difference. So I'll leave it at that. But the first thing you can select here is you could specify which building that you're looking for courses in. So which buildings that courses are active or inactive within. I will be honest, I don't typically use this. I just, I don't specify a building when I'm looking for courses. But in your district, that may be different, especially if you're looking in a large district and you're trying to sift down a little bit. Every filter here, just like a filter on any page in PowerSchool, will help you get a little bit closer to the results that you're looking for. So you may use some of these filters, you may not. You can also, interestingly, you can look at courses that were active within a certain year or not. So I have 45 algebra courses that are being listed right now with the year I have selected. And I'm going to go ahead and uncheck inactive, which I will talk about. I'm down to 42 now, but I'm going to go back to say 21, 22. Every time I'm changing something in my filters, I do want to hit apply so that it reflects the new changes in my search. So there were 40 classes with the word algebra in the name. All right, so it's not just algebra, it's anything with algebra in the name here, that were active in the year 21, 22. And I can go back a little further, same results. So usually I'm starting off in the current year and going from there when I do my searches. So notice these pluses over here. I will talk a little bit more about that in a moment here, but you can add filters by using those plus buttons. The next piece I want to talk about here is the status. So is the course currently active within the building within the year? You can see that every course that I have in my selection currently is showing active and which buildings it's active in. Now, there's a lot of places I can click here. All of this is hyperlinked, and most will take you to the course setting preferences itself, the course settings itself, which we're not ready to quite go to yet. But I can see which buildings that this course is currently active within. So likely and expectedly, it's available in my middle school and my high school, this standard Algebra 1 course, whereas Algebra 1A and 1B is only something that I use at the high school. All right, so maybe kind of a different level, different way for students to take Algebra 1. So it's really good to get familiar with your courses and ultimately decide whether you do need all these courses active. Something I'm seeing in here right off the bat is that there are 5 that I can see pre-algebra classes available to the middle school. Are we using 5 different pre-algebra classes? Probably not, but that's something for your team to consider. Is that a place where I'd want to go make some of these inactive for the 25-26 year so I can get on the road to course cleanup? Back up to these settings. So I can include inactive in my search, and it added 3 more courses to my selection. I can see that here. I had 42. I now have 45. So in addition to the courses that are active in buildings, I now see there's another pre-algebra that is inactive for the high school in the year 24-25. So not being used. If I really want to open this search wide open, I can select all courses in our district. And whenever you are creating a new course, when you're asked to create a new course, I would really encourage you to have all of these checkboxes in your search and search anything that might sound like that course. What you don't want to do is duplicate the courses that are available in your district and make a mess. So I'm going to use my my maybe strange sounding elective because I want to come up with something unique that you probably don't have in your district, but coffee brewing. So coffee brewing class is new. We want to offer that for next year. But I wonder if coffee brewing has ever been offered in our district in the past. Was there ever a coffee class? Okay, that's good. I don't see anything with coffee in it. I don't see anything with brewing. Um, so I'm going to say there's not because I have everything active, inactive, and unavailable in my search parameters right now. So something to keep in mind. And by the way, when I searched algebra this time and I have everything checkboxed, I notice when I hit enter, just like hitting apply, the number did jump up significantly. So I'm getting all of these classes, look like some college credit plus classes. I see Franklin, I see MTC that are neither are not active in any of the buildings. Okay. I can add different search parameters. I can do name and number, but from my perspective, I usually only do one or the other. So I'm going to get rid of that search and I'm going to say number. I want to know anything that has alg in the number, or maybe anything with MTH in the number, which looks to be mostly a different set of classes. What I would encourage you to do as a team when thinking about course management as a whole is think about how you can make your courses consistent in terms of namely the number, but also the name sometimes, because we notice a lot of inconsistencies throughout our districts when we look at the courses list. And truthfully, the reason is usually staff changes. So as one person who manages courses leaves and another person comes in, sometimes there's a different philosophy coming in the door. Sometimes there's a different administrator coming in the door that has a different idea on how to organize these courses. A process that I went through in the district I used to work in is we wanted to create the consistency among our course numbers. So what we did was we created a whole new, we exported all of our courses, and this is something we can help you with. I'm going through this process with one district right now. We are exporting an entire set of courses for the reasons of their course numbers being inconsistent. We are keeping all of the same settings on those courses, except just changing the course number. And this is probably the best place to point this out while I'm saying this. You can't change a course number. It's highly frowned upon. It's not a good idea. If you need to change a course number and that course has already been in use, then you want to create a brand new course. And the thinking there is that obviously you can't change a course number in the middle of a school year for the obvious reasons. There are grades and assignments and attendance and course sections specifically tied, enrollments, all tied to that course number now. So you wouldn't want to do that. What you'd want to do is create a new course number with the same information on that course, make it available for the future year, and start using that one next school year. But going back to my example here, so what we're in the process of doing with the district is we are exporting all of their CCP courses to make the numbering more consistent. She is changing all of the course numbers how she wants them, so that when someone's searching for courses or when someone sees the course numbers on their schedule or later on down the road in a student record, there's a consistency piece there now. There will be for anyone who takes it in the future. So we are changing which courses the students are going to be taking, but they're the same course setup, just with different course numbers. You can't change a course number, but you can create a new course with the same information. Then next year we will make these old courses inactive, right? Unavailable, I should say, unavailable, and we will make sure the new courses are available to the building. So we'll only be working with the one set of CCP courses. But that's a process that I went through in my former district with all of our courses to have a consistency across the board in the course numbers. So every math course had an MTH in the front of it, and every English course had an ENG at the front of the course number. And science was SCI, but you can see where I'm going with this. So it's a philosophy. It's a way to think about long-term planning. So when there's going to be different people doing scheduling in your district. One day you won't be there, and what do you want it to look like for that next group of people who come in and work with these courses? We want it to make sense for everyone. But in terms of consistency across our districts, there's absolutely no consistency. It is completely a local decision. It is in your hands, the hands of the people who manage courses in your district. So when I go into our train environment versus any live environment across the board, I am definitely going to see something different in terms of courses, and that's okay because it's your district. You get to decide that. Questions so far? Just like the apply button here, I can clear my settings and I can start from scratch. So I can just start all over. Again, I'm going to add, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to go back to name. That's the better example in terms of what we're doing. And I'm going to pull up all active Algebra 1s here. Okay. All right. Another function that you can do from this page, another couple of functions that you can do from this page is, well, let me talk through some of the settings on these courses that you can see here. Course number, we've talked a little bit about already, and course name, I think those are the most obvious ones. Some of your districts are labeling courses with departments. There's really not much harm in doing so, but in our opinion, there's not a whole lot of benefit to doing so either. I would be curious to hear from users how they're using departments, because we don't see departments used a whole lot in terms of the functionality or searching within PowerSchool. Some of our districts put a department on a teacher, some of them put it on a course, some of them don't use it at all, and most times it's inconsistent on whether there's a department on a course, as you can see. So it's all dependent on usually the person setting up the course and what they want on here. But you all have departments available to you in your schools, and you can create departments. If there's say a new department, I'll use my example. There's a new department called coffee for all the coffee related courses that you're going to have in your district. You could create a department for that. All right. So not just the standard math, science, social studies, English, and health, PE, and art. So you can create a new department if that's the way you want to categorize your courses and your teachers.
Stephen, there's a chat. Can you clean up that department list?
Yeah, and that's done in the building level. So the departments are actually at the building, not at the district. So each building has their own departments, and you can search departments within the building using your search up here or going to the scheduling menu from the left side. And you can look at all the departments that are available to you in the building, and you can add to. I wouldn't delete. Delete, you'll probably hear us say this more than once this morning and in all our trainings. Delete's a dirty word in PowerSchool. I would discourage you from ever deleting anything out of PowerSchool. And in our example right here, if I went and deleted the math department out of my departments list, that could have unintended consequences for these courses that are attached to a math department from the past. So I would never encourage you to delete one, unless you know every course that's been designated on that department, which you could technically search here. Right? Prerequisites. Some of you are using prerequisite rules and prerequisite notes. There is a slight difference, but they're very related to each other. A prerequisite note is simply informational. So by putting a prerequisite note on a course setting, you are giving some information for whomever can see these, whether it be your admin users or your students who are making requests from the public portal for their future year courses, most typically at a high school, sometimes at a middle school level. But this note is informational for your students and your admin users. What can be done in addition to that as a prerequisite rule? Those working in the Power Scheduler world would have heard that before from Kim and I and the rest of our scheduling team, because you can set a prerequisite rule on a course that restricts them from students from being able to choose that course in their requests in the public portal. So prerequisite notes and rules can work in tandem with one another, but one is not required for the other. So again, the note is informational, and a rule can be set so that the student can not select a course if they don't meet that prerequisite rule. But so you'll see a lot of courses in your building, and none of your courses may have a prerequisite note. It is completely optional depending on what you want to communicate, again, to your admin users when they're looking here, or your student and parent users if they're making course selections in the public portal. All right. So I've talked a little bit about what you see over here, whether a course is active in that building or not, or inactive. The fee, this is, some of our districts still use PowerSchool fees, and some of you are using third-party vendors for your fee assignments to students. And if you're using a third-party vendor, that will not show here. As you can see, it's kind of a rarity in our district to have that on a course. So course fees, I'm seeing less and less over the last 5 or 6 years, but we do still have districts that have to have that. So that's what you would see here if there were course fees attached to a specific course. All right. I talked earlier about delete being a dirty word. So sometimes we get requests asking if we can delete a course. And the answer here might surprise you. Occasionally we do delete a course, but there's only one occasion where I would ever do that. And here it is. If you are in process of creating a course and you made a mistake in the course number, and that course was never used for anything yet, there were no course assignments, no course sections. Obviously, that means there was no enrollments, attendance, grades, assignments attached, because it was just created this year, has not been used for anything yet. In that case, if I can confirm all of those things with you, we can delete it. And the reason is sometimes you make a mistake in the naming convention, or maybe this morning or yesterday you wanted to get a head start on creating some new courses for next year. And since you've heard our presentation this morning, you realized, ooh, maybe I do want to go with some different course numbers. But hey, those courses have not been used for anything yet. In that case, we could help you in the background go and delete a course, but it is not recommended in general. So if there's any risk that I think of that course that has been used for anything, I would not delete that course. But occasionally, probably once or twice a year, I do get a case that says, hey, I just created this course and I realized I put a rogue letter or space or leading zero that you told me not to do, which we'll talk about in this course number, and I want to kind of take that back. I want to change that. We can help with that, all right, in the background. So that's, again, we would rarely delete a course, though. All right, next up, the setting. Before I get into courses here, the setting I want to show you on courses, on this page, is that I can edit the availability for courses. And I think what I'll do is I'll do this here. Let's say these are the courses that I need to edit the availability of. I see they're available to the MHS, but I need to make them available to MMS, my Meta middle school as well. You may or may not have noticed that when I checked these boxes, it gave me an option down here to edit the availability for multiple courses. So I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to click Edit Availability for Schools and Years. This is a way to edit availability for multiple courses at a time. So I'm going to click on Edit Availability here. And the first piece it asks me is for which years that I want to make it available to. For my purposes today, and I'm gonna tell you why in my example I'm doing this, is I'm going to make it available for the current year and the future year. I'm going to make a note about PowerScheduler here. If your users are using PowerScheduler to schedule students, and they're currently about to get ready to create their course catalog over there, any course they use in PowerScheduler has to be available for the current and the future year. So in this example, these algebra courses need to be available in PowerScheduler for my PowerScheduler users to schedule students into for next year in the middle school. Then I need to make it available for both years. I'm going to click Next here, and then I'm going to get my schools. The only one I want to change is I want to make them available in the middle school. So those 5 courses I have selected for this year and next. Again, the only reason I'm selecting this year in addition to next year is so they have access to them in PowerScheduler. And then I have an option down here, make available or make unavailable. In my example, the choice is obvious, but if we were doing the opposite, making courses unavailable, you could do that here too. So if I was grabbing a group of courses that I know we're not using next year, no one needs them in PowerScheduler, we're not scheduling any sections of them next year, the courses are basically defunct. They are going away. We're not using them for the time being. We never delete them, but we can make them unavailable. Then I would check that box. But right now, I'm going to make available. And it shows me 5 courses, 2 years, 2 school years, 1 school being Meta Middle School, and total associations. Because 5 courses times 1 school is 5. And then total association conflicts is 1. So I'm going to click into there. And I get cannot make course available because the target year does not exist at the target school. Okay. So because I'm in a training environment, I should have probably checked this, but I worked at the high school, I've worked at the district office, but there is no 25-26 year available at the middle school. So it's not going to be able to make that available at the middle school now for 25-26. But being that I'm making it available for 24-25 at the middle school, once I go create that year-long term at the middle school, it'll roll over into the next year, which is good for me. Now the courses that I selected are available at MMS as well as MHS like they already were. So that's how to edit availability on multiple courses at a time. There is something else I can do from this screen, and you can see probably where I'm going next, and that is edit prerequisites. So I can edit prerequisites individually on a course, which I'll show you where to do in a little bit, but there is also an option to do it for multiple courses at once. So I could, from this screen, add, you know, there's different settings. So it's taking me to the course, to Alg 1 is the course number, and I can add the prerequisite note. I also have the option to edit prerequisites for the entire math department. So what most of our districts do is they go course by course, but this is maybe a function you would use if you were editing multiple courses at once. If let's say that you were creating multiple courses at once, you need to edit the prerequisites on all, then you could do it this way. But typically it's done course by course. So we're going to see this in a bit here. This is the screen that you would see on an individual course. In our case, 2 Alg 1 is the number, and these are the tabs that you're going to see on each of the course settings preferences pages. But before I go there, I do want to point out some of you will utilize this feature. If I want a list of a certain type of course, like every course that has algebra on it, and I want to see them all on one page, I could expand my view here. And I'm going to get, all of them likely when I put in 150. That is quite a few courses with the name algebra in it, but you can see there's a lot of duplicates in here. But if I wanted to get this report for somebody, share it with somebody, I could print it up here. I could print this list now. I could have done it before, but now I have everything on one page to print together. Also, I want to point out this new course button up here. Because in my manage course settings, I've set it in my district so that I can only create new courses at the district office level. This button's only available here. It should not be available in the school at this point. But we're gonna test that theory. Because I am gonna flip over to the school to show you. We're gonna go to school now. We go to the high school, I'm sorry. And the courses menu is found in much the same way at the school building. School management, courses and programs, courses. Because I've turned this setting off at the district office level, I don't have a new course option. It did keep my search here available. I also do have a button for manage courses at this school. But I believe if I go into the availability, it's not going to let me. Let's see. So it does give me the options. And it looks like it does. So it is allowing me to remove them from active in my building, which is surprising to me. That's kind of what I wanted to check. I wanted to test that theory. I do want to go into an individual course, though. So let's pick our standard Algebra 1 course. And this is where we'll be heading very soon at the district office level. I want to come over here to availability. And it looks like it's not even, which is unexpected, it's not even allowing me to see the availability. I would think it would say that, and instead of edit availability, I would have a view over here. This may be a consequence of our train environment, and I apologize for that. So we'll go back to the district office level. We'll see what it looks like over there. Hopefully we're seeing what we need to see there. So I'm going back to the courses menu at the district office where I can manage all of my courses. And I'm going to start with my standard Algebra 1. First I'm going to talk through these preferences really quickly because we are running short on time and our EMIS representative is going to be here soon, and I want to give her the time that she needs as well. So it does give me the name of the course. Notice that I can actually change the name. If I edit the name of the course and I submit at the bottom, it will change this display name. We get request questions all of the time, so I want to clarify this. You can change a course name. You can do that. The only thing to take into consideration is that, or the main thing to take into consideration is the timing in which you change the name. Course information is year specific. In fact, for this course from this page, I can view course information by year. I'm going to show you what that looks like. And I can see how this course was set up for each individual year. It may have been, I'm going to guess it's not, but this course could have been called something different in 2021. And it likely was not because it's their standard Algebra 1. But maybe there's a course that changed for a specific year on what they called it, and that would be reflected here, or any of the pieces that changed. Obviously, from this page, for all the right reasons, I cannot change how a course was set up in a past year. I wouldn't want to do that. But I can see how a course was set up. So if for some reason the Algebra 1 class was changing, likely if, by calling it Algebra 1 Basic, I'm heavily implying a different type of algebra here. If I was going to do that, I would definitely create an entirely new course. But for my example, I could rename the course, I could save it, and I can do that mid-year. But again, timing being the most important consideration here, because there's already stored grades in your building for Algebra 1. If I change the name, the next time you have grades stored this year, it's going to store as Algebra 1 Basic, and it's going to be inconsistent data now throughout your year. So when district leaders, course managers, schedulers ask me when or how or if they should be changing a course name, I would say you can, but what I would do is if you can wait till the end of the school year, wait until after the final grades for a school year are stored, then change the name. However, if for some reason you need to change the name mid-year, you have to take into consideration that there's now stored grades with that old name on it. And that's a little bit of a cleanup issue for you that we can help with, but it is a bit of cleanup there in the background. We would probably, I think you would want us to rename the course names on all those stored grades for this year with that new course name that you're changing it to if you've already stored grades. But just like considering the end of the school year, if you're at the beginning of the school year and you have not yet stored grades, you could technically change a course name up to that point, and it wouldn't have any consequence. But everywhere that students, parents, teachers, and administrators see a course name, they would see that new course name immediately. All right, if I change it here, everyone's going to see the impacts of that course change immediately. So just some careful considerations if you choose to change a course name at some point. During this time of year, when I get this question, sometimes the question back is, do you want to change the course name now, or do you want to just create a new course, make this one inactive for next school year, and make the new one active for next school year with the new name? It might be a little cleaner for you in the end. I know it's creating another course record, but just consider some of the consequences, some of the cleanup that it might entail if you're going to change a course name mid-year that's currently being used. Questions there? All right, course description, completely optional. Hey, I always think that the more information we have available to us, the better. But yeah, we do have some districts that have gone through the work of copying, pasting out of their, say, course handbook. I know a lot of us now have an online course handbook. Not as many of us are printing books, course handbooks on paper anymore. Excuse me, but if you wanted to put your course descriptions in here, you could plug these in, and that would be available to your admin users. So if someone is wondering what the differences are between your 72 Algebra 1 classes, this could help differentiate among them. Also, if your students do make their course requests via PowerScheduler, these course descriptions will pop in the request screens in PowerScheduler, which is probably the number one reason to have a course description. So again, completely optional. There is work involved. There's not a great easy way to just simply import all of this data. It's not as clean as one might think. So, but it can be done. But it sometimes is just easier to come to each of these and put a description on all the courses that you want a description on. So it's, again, kind of taken out on my other screen might have my course handbook, copy, paste it right in there, save. All right. Alternate course number. A lot of you aren't using this, but we have seen it used occasionally. Some states do require it for reporting. Some districts use it as like the college course number. And when you're creating a new course, as I talked about earlier in my example, if you're creating a new course to replace an old one, sometimes we put the former course number in that spot. So you can see this used to be, this new course used to be called 2Alg2 or something like that. Just to, get, again, a little bit more information. Credit hours. So this is mostly related to high school credit, but not completely. All right. So credit hours is the amount of earned and or potential credit that a course is worth. And I say it that way because when we think credit hours, we almost always think about the credit that a student earns in high school. And usually that is what we were talking about. But credit hours also pertains to how when grades are being stored, a lot of your grade point average GPA calculations are calculated upon the potential credit of a course. So even when we're talking about middle school classes that have no earned credit, those classes may have credit on them so that when the grades are stored, there's potential credit stored, and then those grades will be included in their quarterly GPA calculation. So there are other reasons to have credit hours other than simply earning high school credit. And a lot of that comes back to how grades are stored and making sure grades are being stored properly. Because if you do have a middle school class for no high school credit that has a 1 here or a half or some number other than 0 or blank, if you store the credit with earned credit, then you may be at risk of putting credit where credit is not earned or due onto a student's grade record. So good to work with the people who store grades in your district or in your buildings when deciding whether a course should have credit hours on it, because they need to know how to store those classes, whether they need to be storing with potential and earned, or with no credit at all. We've seen it done every way in the over 80 school districts we work with. So careful considerations. Max credit hours. Max credit hours are going to be the max amount of credit a student can earn for this course. All right. You don't have to have anything here. It's 0 by default. It's going to be blank or 0 by default. But if I put a 1 here, that means a student could not take Algebra 1 more than once. They can only earn the credit. Now, they could be enrolled in it more than once, but they can only earn the credit once. So if the student somehow, in someone's mistake, took Algebra 1 in freshman year, earned the credit, then took it sophomore year, earned the credit, they will not have credit the second time around. So it's kind of a safety net. I don't see a lot of districts necessarily using this. More than likely, you're using it for something like PE or weightlifting or something like that, where you do allow students to take courses more than once, but they can only earn a half a PE credit total. So you might put like a half max for those quarterly, those quarter length, not length, but quarter credit PE courses. That's the most common way I've seen that used. The SIP code. This is a number to identify courses for various types of instructional programs. I haven't seen this option utilized in the majority of our districts, but you have a couple of settings. So our career centers may be using the designation of vocational. If this course is used in academic and career plans, which is something PowerSchool rolled out a few years back, again, we don't have any districts that I know of using the academic and career plans. There may be out there, you may be one of them, but I'm not aware of them. You can check box that. And if there's a possibility of a PE waiver for the course, then you can check that box as well. Student programs, real quickly. Most student programs in your district are for state reporting purposes for the state of Ohio. And by designating a program for a course, which this is a rarely used function to overall for the entire course designate a program, it will attempt to balance students within that program within those every course section of it. So more often, when you're talking from a scheduling standpoint, you're going to designate the program on the individual sections, not on the course as a whole. So that's something that will be discussed among our Power Scheduler crew, our Power Scheduler teams within each building on what the best way to utilize that is. Credit type, applicable at the high school level almost always. Credit type is a local decision. So you have these usually 2 or 3 letter codes that are designations on a course for graduation requirements. That's usually how credit types are used. This is different from EMIS core area codes because this is a local designation. Now your credit types may match your EMIS code, but they may be different. So we get questions about this a lot. Whereas down below the blue line down here for EMIS reporting, you're going to see different. You're going to see something different potentially. Now, again, a lot of times you're using the same credit types codes as you would be in EMIS core area codes, but you are able to call out different courses with you could have really an unlimited amount of credit types. We have seen a few different things. We've seen a certain credit type put on all middle school courses, and then that credit type is excluded from the transcript for the obvious reasons to make sure that because they want to designate something as a middle school course, but not have it appear in the transcript. So it might have an MS credit type designation for that purpose. So we've seen some different ways that these are used. But you may want to call out like you may have a speech requirement at the high school, which is not a requirement for graduation at the state level that I'm aware of. So you might have a credit type of SP for, every student has to have a half credit of SP credit type sort of thing. That's another way to use it. Default max enrollment, it is what it sounds like. So when you're creating course sections, it defaults to this number. But on the individual course sections, you can always designate that. Like a lot of these, like several of the settings coming up here, you can change the setting on the individual course section, but you can set it at the course level as well. We talked about departments. If I try to associate this to a department from here, I'm not going to have any departments, and the reason is that there are no departments available to me at the district office level. You would have to go to the school level to associate that to a department because that's where the departments reside. Subject area is optional. As you can see, this district does not use them. It's an optional field. It can be another way to designate courses for searches, but not necessary. Course notes, it can be for anything that you want. You could put anything here. It's only seen on this page. It's not exposed to students and parents, not in the Power Teacher portal. Just any notes you need about a course can be here. And the exclude from attendance, rarely used, but if you need to exclude a course from attendance, something like case management or a sport, some of you are creating a quote unquote course to track students in sports. Anything like a holding course may be used for, you may be excluding that from attendance. that would be the way to use that. So those of you familiar with attendance, it'll be excluding it from the ADM ADA by default. Storing grades. So if there's a course, similarly, like things like lunches, holding courses, early release, late arrival, anything that doesn't get a grade, certain designation like even athletics, like the example I just gave, you would want to exclude that from storing. So that way, in the store grade process, it's not storing blanks for every student who's enrolled in one of those, I'll call them holding courses or fake courses, you'd want to exclude. Now, this question comes up a lot, so I want to point this out for our high school staff on the call, that some of you would be, you might feel encouraged to exclude from storing grades on your CCP grades because technically the kids are getting their grades out from the college that's issuing them. And I do want to point out that we would recommend leaving that unchecked because you do want the students enrolled in a section that shows what CCP class they're in. You do want it to store blank, so that way you can click into that blank later when you get their grades, and you can enter their grade into that spot. And that's what will help you with the state reporting piece of those. If you are hand entering CCP grades coming from elsewhere, you don't want to create a new record from scratch because it won't be tied to the enrollment within your building. I bring this up now, which we usually don't during this training, but it's come up a lot in the past 2-3 years. And our EMIS people are struggling with these decisions to create these new grade records from scratch. So we do want to encourage everyone who is managing, let's say, stored grades or importing grades or hand entering grades from outside the building to make sure students are enrolled in those courses, that you are storing those classes as blank, so do not exclude, and then you can manually enter or import those grades into the spot that has been created by the blank. I know that's kind of a tangent here, but it's just, I'll get off my soapbox now because we've taken a lot of cases on that, and we want to help everybody out because it tends to cause more work for a few people in your district if that's not done properly. If you have follow-up questions about that because it's such a tangent, please schedule a call with us or put in a case. Every course has a grade scale assigned. A lot of times it's going to be default, the default grade scale, but sometimes there's a differing grade scale, like the example in this one. Added value, PowerSchool even gives you a note. Usually the answer is 0, but if there's additional value on a course, then that can be designated here. That way, when the grades are stored, it's giving that extra point value. If there was an additional point value, you could put that here. And then the next 3 are pretty obvious here. Exclude from GPA, class rank, honor roll. Whether if you're at a secondary building, these could be really relevant to you, and you could exclude. So if you're storing grades, but they shouldn't be counted for any of these pieces, then you can exclude. And that can be done in this section as well. Last couple of things here. We don't usually use the course for lunch. That's not something we use in the state of Ohio, so I would never have that checked. We say the same thing in PowerScheduler. You see that option on the courses in PowerScheduler as well. Excluding on report cards and transcripts. I want to make a note about this one. Since our customers at Meta have a Meta report card, a customized report card, and a Meta customized transcript, this does not pertain to our report cards and our transcripts any longer as of a few years ago. This causes some confusion as well. What it does pertain to, though, is what really it should say is student schedules. If you check this box, this course will not appear on student schedules. So usually we get a case or two at the beginning of each year. Why isn't my study hall or lunch or case management or advisory appearing on our student schedules that we've just run? It's because this box is checked. So really this language, this is Core PowerSchool though, and remember Core PowerSchool has their own report card, their own transcript, which you all are not using anymore. So that's why it's putting it that way, but it really should have student schedule on here too, or object reports would be more kind of more general thing to say. So if you want them to appear, this class to appear on student schedules, you'd leave that unchecked. Now, speaking of which, our customized report card, if you have courses that are not appearing on your report cards or your transcript, those settings are here under report card and under meta report builder. That points to your transcript. So I just wanted to point that out while we're here and let you know that that's where these settings are found. So this can be set up on any course for the report card and any course for the transcript. That those settings are found here. So just want to point that out. All right. All right. I think that's all I have. Let's see if anyone has any questions for the course settings on courses or anything that I've covered so far. I believe, is Susan here? Not seeing her.
I am.
Oh, you are. Okay. I guess
am.
I can't see all users. Oh, I've got 2 screens of users. That's right. There's a
Okay.
lot of people here.
Yeah.
All right. So before I turn it over to Susan, I'm going to ask again, is there any questions about anything that I've covered before we turn it over to the EMIS side of things?
Stephen, if you can scroll up just a hair. Use this course for lunch. Should always be checked on your lunch course.
Okay.
That
Okay,
impacts,
thank you for pointing that out.
Sure, that impacts House Bill 410 calculations because the student, if the student would leave during the lunch period, those minutes don't count for absences. So that is something that I, wanted to make sure everybody was aware of.
Okay. And
Okay.
I'm glad you brought that up because that reminded me of something that I missed
Sure.
in this, and that's this down here. Susan, I believe we would click that here as well for our lunches.
You can,
Exclude.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just to make, yeah. And so I'm glad you brought that up because I do want to point that out down here. This is kind of past the standard EMIS stuff, but it does live down here. So you want to check box this on your lunch courses as well. But thank you for pointing that out.
Yep.
Right. Well, Susan, I did share that we have your document out in the folder, so they do have everyone here has access to the document that you shared with me the other day.
Awesome.
And then I'm going to stop sharing.
All right. I appreciate being able to spend some time with you today and kind of talk through the EMIS side of course reporting. That's one thing, as you're working with students to schedule them and to get your courses set up and your administration to do things, it's important that you understand the impact on Ohio reporting. So I wanted to take some time and do a quick kind of course review. We do this with our EMIS coordinators for their benefit, but if we can shed some light for you, I think it would help to complete the whole full process. So we're going to start below the Ohio State reporting information line, but it's important that you know that the state of Ohio does pull from above that line 3 elements: the course name, the course number, and the credit hours. Stephen talked about how important the credit hours are, and it's not always for high school credit, but you do want to make sure it is correct if it is for high school credit. In other words, you don't want a full credit being given for phys ed or something. You want to make sure those credit hours are appropriate for the course when it is for high school credit. I don't know if he's already mentioned this, but best practice is to put no spaces in the course number. It can just play havoc with our extracts and what have you when there's spaces in the course number. So I wanted to point that out as well.
I'm glad you brought that up because I did forget to mention that piece with the rules on course numbers, and I have that here in my notes. I just glanced over it. No spaces in the course number. that does not only impact EMIS, but it does impact sometimes scheduling as well. And just another dovetail off of that, if you are creating any new courses moving forward, please do not use leading zeros at the beginning of a course number. Main reason is when you export that information to a spreadsheet, sometimes you would lose those leading zeros, and it tends to complicate things for you.
I will just add that to our document.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is just a copy of what, a typical course that's set up would look like below that Ohio State reporting information line, the blue banner. This is all required reporting for the state of Ohio. And I want to just go through these elements, like I said, just kind of a quick overview so that you understand what these are impacting. So the first thing is exclude from EMIS course reports. That would only be checked if any course would be not reportable to EMIS. Study halls, lunch, things like that would be checked here. It can also apply, possibly if you have a course being taken for auditing purposes only, your placeholders, your office workers, part-time JVS students, things like that. The educator search and the certification and licensure search are just links to the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce site to look up certification and licensure or credential IDs. It's important to note that most of these fields from here down can be overridden at the section level. So notice the exclude from EMIS reporting is not one of those. So if you exclude the course, no sections will go either, and you can't override it at the section level. So I wanted to make sure and point that out. So underneath here, there's the first line is CTA, CBI course, no students. This identifies if a course should be included even if no students are currently enrolled for Ohio reporting. So let's say, for instance, I don't know, you had an ag class that you had first quarter, and you only had a half a dozen kids in it, and after the first quarter they dropped and went to something else. So that would have 0 enrollment, but it still needs to be reported because the students were in it for a whole quarter. You might need to check this box to get it to pull for Ohio reporting. The subject codes, the EMIS manual is your best friend here to help you find subject codes. It is important when you're going through subject codes, there are categories. Career tech education is a huge category with a lot of rules around it. So if you get into the subject code and you just do a control find, let's say for robotics, for instance, there is a career tech robotics, and then there's a technology robotics. So if you don't have career tech at your school, you haven't filled out a CTE 26 and submitted to the state of Ohio, you have to, tell the career tech people what you're offering. You have to get it approved in March of the previous year. So if that hasn't happened, you wouldn't want to pick the career tech subject code, because then that's going to wreak havoc on your reporting, because they're going to start looking for special certifications. They're going to look for minimum and maximum hours. There's just a lot more rules around it. So for this example, you want to be careful when you're looking through those subject codes, which category what you're finding is in. If you search robotics and the only one you found was career tech and you don't have career tech, then you might have to resort to, the most appropriate match might be there's an other technology or something like that. So it is important when selecting these subject codes, it defines what you're doing in the course, what the curriculum is, and then B, the category is appropriate. If it's not career tech, then you can't use those career tech codes. You shouldn't use those. The course level, this is not required for most courses, but you can need it for some. For instance, would be your foreign languages, Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4. It's all the same subject code. It's Spanish is the subject code, but you might want a course level on that to know that the student is progressing through the levels of that course. The semester code is important. It's the length of time in weeks or semesters that the course is taught. There is a full year course code. There is a semester 1 course code and a semester 2 course code. If you have one code that you offer first semester and second semester, again, as I said, these things below this line can be overridden at the section level. So, our recommendation is you set the course up for either one of the other. If you have one section first semester and 10 second semester, you may want to set the course up as a second semester course and then just override that one section that's offered first semester, or vice versa. The length of instruction is actually a calculation of the length of instruction. If you had 50-minute class times and you had, let's say, 180 days in the school year, you literally do the math, and you figure out how many hours they are in there. A full year course should not exceed 1,260 hours, and a semester course not to exceed 630 hours. You are to report the amount of time in your elementary. For instance, if they go to music 1 day a week, you do actually calculate they only go 1 day a week and report those hours as appropriate. It is important to know that the minimum length for a non-credit flexibility course is 9 hours. So if you have, anything with less than 9 hours, you're going to get an error unless it is a credit flex. The location IRN in general is the physical location where the course is being held, is what is reported. This can differ for CCP, JV satellite, preschool, things like that. And again, the manual is your best reference for that to make sure that that's being reported appropriately. The subject area for credit, Stephen touched a little bit on this. I like, it helps me to think above that blue Ohio State line is what impacts transcripts, things like that. Below the Ohio State line is what is actually getting to the state. So it is important that those subject areas for credit are as accurate as possible. For instance, their example, the Ohio Department's example is if you had a business course and you're thinking of that as an elective, if you would code it ELE as an elective, it won't count for the state minimum requirements for graduation. So you would want to be more specific and use the business subject area for credit. So this in the subject area for credit is what subject area the course is being offered for. So I've had questions where, maybe I have this elective English class that for these, 5 kids, it's going to count as their 4th English, but for everybody else, it's an English elective. So here again, you would either create a separate course if you would, if you need a separate course, or you would have to override later, but you would identify the subject area, what it would be for the majority of the students, what the course is offered for the majority of the students. Language used, pretty self-explanatory. CTE college credit, this is only, again, if you have career tech, and career tech that has dual credit associated with it. Your curriculum is the source model program for a course. Your delivery method tells if it's face-to-face, online, things like that. The educational option, there's rules behind that as well. You can see we keep all these drop downs updated to the state of Ohio. So whatever's in the drop down are your options. And if you need further definitions, the manual is your go-to there as well. Student population becomes very important when you're relating to special education. You know, if this is a pull-out course that has special education students only in it, you would want to be sure and code that correctly for the student population, because that in turn impacts your teacher licensure and whether it's appropriate or not. So now there's the core area code, and I get the question all the time. I don't understand why we have to say twice. Here's the subject area for credit. Again, this is what it's offered, what the course is being offered, what subject area. Now, the core area code is what you actually issued the credit for. So as I talked about those 5 kiddos in that one English class that it's going to count for their 4th English, then that is how you would adjust it. You would come to the core area code for those 5 students on their stored historical grade and say, for these 5 students, it's an ENG, not an ENE, the English elective versus the English core requirement. Credit flex, that you do have to have a district board approved policy for credit flex, but this is an option you have for courses as well. The teacher licensure IRN, this is only used if, for instance, you contract with your ESC for a teacher for a course or something. That's when this teacher licensure and the staff provider IRN would be populated. You know, the ESC staff member, you would put the staff provider IRN in there, saying that that's who's paying the teacher basically. And then the state of Ohio links those two together. They take from the ESC that teacher's pay record and associate it to your course. Dual credit is very important. It impacts your grad credit progress, your grad reporting. It is an indicator on your college career and readiness portion of your local report card. It is very important that this dual credit is correct. When you select that it is yes, a dual credit, then you have to put in the amount of college credit they get. So typically, you know, 1 high school credit would be 3 or above college credits. ODEX is a great tool. There is a CCP module within ODEX that you can actually do a course export, and you can verify, you know, you've got all your courses set up, you've got them all set up correctly with the amount of dual credit hours they're earning. As I said, if any one student earns 12 college credits or more, you get a bump up on your local report card, saying that they are prepared for college. So that's important that those are checked, verified, and reported accurately. Block scheduling identifies a true block scheduled course. This is used for the pre-ID to determine which test administration to pull, as well as for CRDC reporting. Again, a truly block scheduled course would mean they get the whole course content in one semester. So that would not typically be, you know, a 60-hour course. That would be a 120-hour course that is given in its entirety in an individual semester. And the last point is exclude from FR reporting. FR reporting is course grade reporting to the state. And this is a big reason why the CCP, Stephen talked about storing a blank grade for your CCP courses. And this course grade reporting is exactly why. Because the state has to have the course ID and the section ID to tie these grades to it. So that's why, it used to be we could go in historical grades and hand enter, this CCP course, they earned, a credit and go on, but you can't do that anymore. You either have to store the blank grade, or before you can enter any CCP grades into historical grades, you would have to look up the course number and the section number to enter those grades. So any questions? I know that was kind of a quick run through, but I can see in chat, is that how the dual credit part of the state report card is calculated? It is. It is. If the course is set up correctly with the dual credit, that is exactly how it is calculated, is off what you are reporting on each individual student in each course. Good question. So I want to talk then about changes. Subject codes are one thing that is controlled at the district. We used to maintain that for the state of Ohio, but many districts express that, there's tons of subject codes, and they're like, we just don't want to see all these subject codes. We will never ever use, I don't know, Portuguese or something, and we just don't want it muddied up our subject code list so that someone could accidentally pick these ones that we are never going to use. So we did, several years ago, make the decision that the districts could maintain their own subject codes, and that is part of code sets. Pros and cons to everything. It does give you, that ability to be able to not have it muddied with a lot of stuff that you don't need and, particularly don't want to see, but that also means that you have to maintain it. So for FY25, there were very minimal changes to courses, but I wanted to make sure you knew how to, instruct someone or how to do it if you're the one that would do it. So if you go to code sets, which is in system management data code sets, we do recommend at first you do a search, a control F for the new code to make sure it's not already there. Lots of times when they do the subject drop down, you might look for a wording, and maybe they had a typo in the wording. So we do suggest that you look, for the code and the warning before, so that you don't duplicate entries. So the code set for this is subject code. If you need to add, you merely select the add code, and then this slide out drawer will appear. This is the actual subject code, and this is a new course for this year, 290220. It's cybersecurity education. You need to make sure you have a reported value that matches the code 290220. You can put a start date of when it's new for this year, so you could put that start date, and you can put the parent code, which just groups your subjects into the categories. Upon submit, you will get a green check mark stating that the code was added successfully. It kind of just pops on the screen and goes away, so I couldn't give you a screenshot of that, but I wanted to let you know that. So here are a couple other changes for 25, the added subject codes. And this is a perfect example of, these are career tech subject codes. If you don't have career tech, you might not want to add these. Again, you might not want to muddy your drop-down list with courses that don't apply to you. So you would have to review, and make your district decision as to whether you wanted to add these codes or not. There were a couple technology codes. The cybersecurity is the example I gave above, but here is what the subject code listing looks like in the EMIS manual. You know, it gives you a definition so that you can verify this really is what's being taught. Another thing that they can do periodically is actually change the description of subject codes. There was one for 25 and they merely changed, it was modeling and quantitative reasoning. They took the modeling and out. So to do those changes, you know, you can go back to this code set, do a control find at the bottom, type in the code, you know, it'll bring you to that. Click on the pencil to edit. And again, the slide bar comes out and you can, you know, I just took off the first two words off of the display value and submit. You can find the change dates on these. For instance, here's one that they did away with, Intervention Mathematics 111950. That was a change for 25. You can see on from the ODU's website, there's actually a final date. So you can see this was final July 23rd. So when I go to that code set, I do a control find to find that code. I click on the pencil. When it pops out, I can put that actual date. July 23rd is when it was final. You know, another recommendation we have is that you might want to put a Z in front of the display value in an obsolete FY24. That way, again, if it appears in historical data, you can see when it ended. Just, you know, something to assist you moving forward. So that's with the changes, deletions, and additions of subject codes. Any questions with that? In chat, so I will go ahead and keep moving. So the tools to assist you in reviewing your current course data. If you're not familiar with compliance reports, those are our state reports. This GC Student Graduation Core Detail Extract is huge. It really can help you, A, find errors, B, you know, check your courses and make sure everything's being reported properly on students. This is the parameters you would run with that with. This will impact your grad credit progress. It's a contributing factor in your student course grade missing report, the progress toward graduation, the early warning system, all of this is impacted. The first thing I always tell districts to search for is a core area code of ERR. What these are is courses that most of the time they were hand entered. Say, you know, a student came in their senior year and you've got a whole transcript to enter. They got entered without a core area code. So, you know, they don't know, we don't know what bucket to put it in. So you'll get an error here. And you can see most of these don't have course numbers. So, you know, at that time you would need to review for these students and, you know, make sure this health gets changed to HTH so that it gets reported appropriately and you don't show that you are granting diplomas to students that didn't have, you know, didn't meet the state minimum requirements. So that's very important to clean up those ERRs periodically. With that, this is just a friendly reminder that when these courses are being entered, there's the two things that are very important when they are entering. This is the single entry. This core area code is where that, you know, puts it in the correct bucket. The dual credit is right here as well. So if a student would come in with CCP credit, you can identify it right here because you perhaps wouldn't have that exact course set up in your courses to link it to. So you can enter that dual credit there as well. It is also available on the multiple entry screen. You can see, you know, here's this course section number and it has the core area and Ohio stuff there, and here's another one, and it has it again. So each credit that you enter, you can identify the core area and the dual credit as appropriate. And again, the dual credit, once you select yes, then another field pops up for you to put, and I always get the question, is this the high school credit or the college credit? This is the amount of college credit they get. So, we kind of talked about this. The tip of the day is that CCP course thing to store those blank grades. Then when you get the grades from the college, you merely just click that little underscore, that little blank record, and say, they got an A. If it's appropriate to put GPA points in for your district, the GPA points, and they earned 1 high school credit. Hit enter and you're done. Everything flows as expected. You don't have to look anything up prior to entry. It's the path of least resistance, if you will. So we do suggest you filter on, you can do whatever's appropriate for your district. We just came up with a few to help springboard you onto what you could do. So social studies other, 2 years ago, they added a world history code. So you could possibly have, a freshman that took world history, 3 years ago that had under the old code. So you might want to sort for a core area code of SOO and then sort for a course name that contained world history. And then you could see which ones might need change to the SWH. You can see with this, the ones that have no course code where they're hand entered, but you can see there are some course codes here. So for example, this 150210 world history, you may need to change that on the course, and then it would take care of all these. If I change 15210 on the course, it will change each individual students. So if there is a course attached, that's an easy way to make a mass change to those. You will definitely want to filter for the ELE. Again, the elective category is not included in the requirement, the 20 total credit requirement by the state of Ohio. This was a change last year, and it was ugly, I'm not going to lie. The biggest one was English, and we kind of, petitioned with the state. We don't want journalism coded English, because then it'll say, the student has 4 English credits because of journalism when we require them to take, English 1, 2, 3, and 4 to meet their core requirements. So the department did add 4 new subject areas for credit, core area codes. They are ENE, MTE, SCE, and SOE. These are options. Guidance from the department is to always use the most specific that would apply. So this does not mean necessarily that you need to go recode all of your SOO, SOE. That is not what this is meaning. This is just giving you another option. And again, I feel like the ENE is going to be the biggest one, simply because, you have journalism, you have other English courses that, you need to count as an elective credit, not an English credit. So that might be a review that you would want to do. There's actually only really just a handful of courses that the subject code in the manual says should be coded ELE. Things like life skills, study skills, things like that are appropriate to be coded ELE. But again, a review is needed. When I did this particular district, like this first one, I could see CCP. Well, first of all, that's a college credit and there's no dual. And second of all, it's coded ELE, so it's not counting for that student. So, these are definitely things, I don't know what AVID is. Maybe AVID is appropriate for ELE, but you would have to analyze this at each district. And again, cleaning up this will impact your students in elective courses and grad diploma possible credit coding errors. If you stay on top of this, this can be run at any time. You can evaluate just your seniors if you want. You can evaluate everyone in your high school, whatever, works for you. And again, I want to stress this dual credit impacts Measure 5 on your college, career, workforce, and military readiness calculation. For this district, I merely searched OSU and Columbus State in the course name. And, I can see that most of them, they had it coded correctly on the course, but there was several hand-entered grades that did not get the dual enrollment credit earned. So, those would want to be, you would want to review and make sure that, you're getting the credit you are due. There is a potential college credit report that the department added last year. So, if you stay on top of this, then that will greatly reduce the questions you get after the fact. And again, these are just suggestions. Some other things that we have seen is they added some science codes a few years ago. SCP is physical science, but there is an advanced SAP. And when I looked at this district, I can see chemistry. Chemistry should be an SAP, not an SCP. So here again is another review that you might want to do. Physics, the same, would be an SAP. You could filter for SCL. Here's a life science. I can see here there's honors chemistry. And you might find those occasional, what in the world? Phys ed is coded science. So, that was just a typo when hand entering this. So you might be surprised what you find sometimes. There is a science code that was SCA. It was no longer valid for FY23 and on. So if you would have courses still using the SCA, those courses need adjusted to either the SAE, SAL, or SAP. If credit was granted in FY23 or beyond. So if possible, it would be very beneficial if these changes could be made prior to storing grades with high school credit, which probably is at the end of your semester. All these changes will prevent students, like I said, from cleanup later. When you get to grad and they say, this kid doesn't have 20 credits. How can that be? My transcript shows 30. Well, because 10 of them are ERR and they didn't get changed. So again, you can make your transcript look right, but if it's not getting reported to the state right, that's a problem. So that's how you identify things that need to be changed. Now, I wanted to show you how to do that. So here, for instance, if this is a hand-entered grade, it's not associated to anything. So you just open that grade. You click on the B on the first screen, and it opens up, and you're going to add the SWH to the core area code. And then the ERR goes away. It goes to the proper bucket and is reported accurately. If you have courses that need changed, you can search for the course number or name. For instance, here's public speaking. For the current year, you just adjust the value by opening that and going to the core area code, subject area for credit, change this to ENE, the English elective. I also wanted to show you how to do a full course review. This is a little bit overwhelming, but you can filter and work with it and find a lot of things that just have gotten copied over year after year after year, and you might not even know they haven't been reported correctly. So if you go to the data export manager, again, we're just giving you suggestions. Here's some suggestions of things you could do. You pull the course name, number, and the credit hours. And then here's some other stuff you can pull, the core area code, things like that. And you hit the next, and then you do show records. It will give you the records and you can export them. Once you get those exported, you can't limit them to the current year, but you could do a data export of the courses by year and conditionally format to only look at the current year courses. So in my example below, I've highlighted those pink. So once you open Excel, you can just let the filtering begin. First thing I always say to do is do the excluded. I just did a filter for excluded equals 1. These are, you can see here, this is like Intervention Study Center. That would be appropriate for it to be, possibly not reported. And any of these that it is correct for them not to be reported, you could remove them from the rest of your checks. Because if they're not reported to the state, you don't need to check them, as long as that is appropriate that they're not reported. So then some things you could filter for. If the credit hour was greater than 0, and they didn't have a core area code, that's a problem. The core area code and the subject area for credit have to be filled out for any course that is offered for high school credit. They do not have to be filled out for elementary courses. Again, it's only for those that are offered for high school credit. You could do some filtering for perhaps credit hours. Again, a typical is 120 hours is 1 high school credit, 60 hours is a half, except for PE. PE is the one exception that 60 hours is only equal to a quarter credit. Make sure those align. Your curriculum, you could do equals PS, which is post-secondary, or your CCP, your college credit plus, and make sure dual credit is yes, and make sure it is appropriate. If you have a course that's post-secondary and getting only a half a high school credit, it shouldn't be worth 3 college credits, and vice versa. If you have, I've seen districts that, perhaps didn't understand, but they set it up 1 high school credit is equal to 1 college credit. That is never the case. There is a conversion. It's never 1-to-1. The core area code, if there's 0 credit hours, again, you don't need the core area code if it's not offered for high school credit. You can look to see that they're all valid options in the core area code. I've listed all the valid options here. I had a district the other day that somehow got one in there. They had imported and it was like BSU. They had a typo. So you'll want to make sure, those are appropriate. The course hours, again, anything less than 9 has to be credit flex. The language, anything other than English, is that correct? Your credit subject area, does it align with the core area? Should it? So again, these are just examples, but it is, a good course review is needed on a yearly basis at least. So another tool available for course review would be the data collector. You would have to work with your EMIS coordinator for this, but we can download for you what is being reported to the state. You could then open those files and do things like, here's some other suggestions. If you had 4 levels of Spanish, you could search for, the Spanish subject code and do I have all those course levels marked? This is a great filter here. If you filter for 1, are my course start dates the first day of school to your semester break? If I filter for 2, is it the first day of the second semester to the last day of school? And if I filter for 3, is it the first day of school to the last day of school? Things like that to make sure your courses are being reported accurately. You can do a reasonability check on your length of instruction. Had a district the other day that accidentally put an extra 0 in. They had 1,200 hours. Things like that. We're all human. We all make mistakes. some verification is appropriate. And again, these are just some examples. Crosscheck is another tool that we have. Crosscheck has a merged file that actually takes the CN and the CU, which is the course master record, and the course teacher record, and it combines them. The good thing about this is it also has a decoding. For example, you might not know off the top of your head, what is a semester code 3? Well, it has a definition right after it. That's an all-year course. So, every code, it decodes it for you. So you don't have to look up what's FF. All that's face-to-face. So obviously, these are only a few ways to start verifying course information. It's not intended to replace anything that you already have that's working well. It's just, intended to be a launching board for you. I also did include on the last page, we put together a document, long-term graduation requirements. Students must earn a minimum of 20 course credits. The state is very specific as to what those have to be in. And we've actually, spelled out the area codes for you, tried to list any, further instructions the state has on things to assist in this. So like I said, I kind of flew through the doc, but is there any other questions? And again, I appreciate Steve and Kim giving me the time to come in and open your eyes a little bit to the EMIS side of it and the state reporting and the impacts of what you do.